want to get into this email from Greg that I received, and I want to kind of talk a little bit about my story. I was kind of reminded of what I went through a little bit, and hopefully maybe inspire you or at least let you know that if you're someone that's out there that I can sense what feels like a little bit of desperation in reading this. If you're someone who's in a similar situation, that you can maybe take solace in my story a little bit, that you don't have to be perfect, you don't have to do everything right. That more than anything, ultimately what I want you to get from this is that more than anything, that what matters is persistence. And the nice thing about that is it's just simply a choice to continue to keep fighting and keep moving forward. So this is the email that I got from Greg. He said, I spend so much time at work that I really don't have any time to do anything for me, and I'm only making minimum wage. So I can't really just not show up for work one day to study. I mean, for me, just an apartment alone is a full paycheck. I don't know why I wrote this, because I doubt you read everything you get from the thousands of people subscribed, but I did anyway. And so first off, I do read pretty much all the emails that I get. I don't necessarily respond to all of them because I do get quite a bit, but I do read them. And again, this one kind of stood out to me a little bit because I remember being in that same situation. And for me, it really happened, as I mentioned, when I got back from Iraq. And, you've probably heard some of the stories and people talk about what people go through when they get back from a situation like that. And maybe not having experienced it, it can seem like, well, okay, maybe, or maybe it's not that bad. And I can tell you from having gone through it that it's really disruptive. I had a friend of mine who I went over with who committed suicide after getting back. And I've had friends of mine who they got back and they didn't know how to function over here. So they went immediately back, and then they went back again and just kept trying to stay in that environment because they didn't know how to be in any other environment. And again, for me, I can fully relate because when I got back, there was probably, it didn't hit me. The interesting thing, it didn't hit me for probably maybe 2 or 3 months, really fully hit me that something wasn't right. And it was probably about 1.5 to 2 years before I really felt like I got kind of back to normal and was able to get my head straight. But in the meantime, in that period, and really, if I'm honest, after that a while too, I really was not. I had a lot of struggles with just regular jobs, getting, moving into IT and being able to be successful and so forth. So, to get specific with it a little bit, when I got back, I immediately applied for, so when I got back, I didn't have a lot of people had like 30 days of leave built up because we were over there for a year. You accrue leave in the Army, which is basically vacation. And a lot of people had, at least 2 weeks, some even 30 days built up. I didn't have any because when we were training, I had both of my grandmas passed away while I was in training. And so I had left for a few days for each one to go to funerals and so forth. So that ate up some of my leave that I was going to accrue. And then my dad, while I was over, was diagnosed with diabetes and cancer. And so I left and came back for a little bit for that. And then I had the regular scheduled. They gave everybody 2 weeks, pretty much made everybody go back for 2 weeks on regular leave. So when I got back, I think I had 3 days of leave left of vacation. So I came back from Iraq. We were at Fort Riley for about 2 days, and then I had 3 days, and I was off the payroll for the Army. So I basically went right out of Iraq into the real world, had to get a job, had to pay rent. I was in the middle of a divorce. So there was a lot going on, and I applied for a job, and I think I quit within probably 2 weeks. Maybe I made it a month. And from that point, I just bounced from job to job to job to job. I worked at the company was Pella Windows, was the first one that I applied for. So I had moved from Nebraska to Iowa. Like I said, I was in the middle of a divorce, and I had then met what is my wife now while I was in Iraq. After that kind of whole thing had started. And so I moved from Nebraska to Iowa. That's where she was from. And I applied at this company called Pella Windows, which is basically a windows manufacturing, door and window manufacturing plant, if you've never heard of it. And was there, like I said, 2 weeks, maybe a month. And I couldn't take it. My job, they would have you when you first started to go around and learn kind of the different positions. But as I settled in, my job became, I had a window would pass me probably every 10 seconds. And I had 3 screws. I had a screwdriver from overhead. I had 3 screws, and I'd drill in those 3 screws, something onto the window. I don't even remember. And so my job every 10 seconds was to drill in these 3 screws, hour after hour after hour for 8 hours a day. Drove me absolutely insane. It was the most boring, just soul-sucking job that I've ever had in my life. And so I lasted just a couple weeks, quit that job, was off for a little bit. So my wife my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, had gotten a job, and she was a lot better than me. She had stuck with it. She ended up working that job for several years. And so and it was a good job. So I had quit. She was able to take care of us. But, it's one of those situations where I could feel the indignation. I could feel her losing respect for me, even though, she's never been that type of person. I think it's just a natural thing that happens. And, I was trying to teach myself how to code. I was trying to teach myself all this online stuff. I was trying to make that my career, but I wasn't at that point. And I had to, things were tight financially for us. It was also kind of hurting our relationship. So I would go and try and do another job. So I worked at a pizza place. I worked at another manufacturing plant. I worked at basically a telemarketing call center. I worked all sorts of different jobs, and I bounced from job to job to job. And just really struggled, and looking back, was not a great employee. I was someone who, when I was there, I was good, but I would quit I would walk out. Well, the first job I quit, there was a 9:15 break. I went out to my car for my 9:15 break, and I left and never came back. And I did that several times. I mean, just if you're to sit back and analyze employees and what everybody's, just analyze people, I was a dirtbag. I really was. I could only hold a job for a couple weeks at a time. I'd walk out without any notice. I wouldn't give any sort of warning. I was a dirtbag. I really was. And even when I started getting into IT and gotten to the point where this whole process, I'm trying to teach myself how to code, even when I got into where I actually started to take clients, the first 2 clients I took, I backed out on. I got partway through the projects and either realized I couldn't finish them or just got overwhelmed, or some reason I backed out of those projects. And so even when my first step into doing IT work and web development, I wasn't great. My first crack on Elance, when I first got on Elance, got on there. It's the story that so many people tell me. I got on Elance and put out my profile and so forth, and nobody hired me. And so my first crack on Elance, I failed at. I failed and failed and failed and failed. And there will continue to be failures for me. But the one thing that I didn't do, the one thing that made the difference, is that I didn't quit. If you look at the situation, I should have quit. I should have given up. As many times as I failed, as many roadblocks as I had, I should have quit. But I just, despite my quitting at jobs, when I'm really interested in something and want something, that was the thing about those jobs. I really didn't want them. I just did them because I felt like I had to. But when I really want something, I never give up and I never quit. And that, to me, the big secret to any success that I've had or the people that I've met, that's the difference. Is just persistence. Is just a willingness to not give up. And I think through all of it, again, the thing that really bothered me, the thing that made me leave those jobs and really just kind of stuck with me and kept me up at night was the fact that I felt like I was capable of so much more. I felt like I had ideas and knowledge to share that I could articulate things in a way that could help people to understand. I just felt like I had more to share and that there was more that I was capable of than screwing in 3 screws. And I imagine a lot of you feel that same way too at times. That there's whatever you're doing now, that there's more that you're capable of. Even a lot of people who are in the IT world, maybe the things that you're doing aren't the things that you thought you'd be doing or that you feel like you are a best use of your talents and that you're capable of so much more. The thing that I want to tell you when it comes to that is you can't ever let that go. If you really believe that, if you really believe that you're capable of more than what you're doing now, whatever you happen to be doing, that's your fuel. That's the thing that you have to hold on to. That's the thing that's going to allow you to be persistent even when you feel like giving up. And so the thing not to do is to not kill that drive or that spirit. Don't tell yourself that to be realistic or to not chase that. You need to hold on tight to that because that is the fuel. One of the things, so this podcast really for me, when I look back, I didn't know it at the time. Okay, I was trying to figure it out, but it's clear to me now. This podcast for me is the thing. It's the thing that I feel like I was meant to do with my life. And it's actually kind of funny because a lot of people, I promote my own products, I promote affiliate products and so forth. And a lot of people think that I do the podcast in order to fuel that part of it, the business side of it, that it's the I get this a lot. People email me and it's, all you care about is money. You're always promoting stuff, et cetera, et cetera. They think that my focus is I do the podcast in order to make money. But that's actually not really the case. It's the opposite. I do the courses and the promote things so I can do the podcast. I don't mind doing courses and so forth. It's not bad, but I thought that was what I really enjoyed. But I've come to find out that that's not really the thing that I like. I like this. Being able to sit down and speak to you and talk to you and just talk and share my ideas and my thoughts, whether you agree or not. Sometimes it's funner if you don't agree because it spurs more of a conversation. But I like, for me, it's sitting here and doing this and having this conversation with you. That's the thing that I've ultimately figured out is what I was meant to do, what matters to me. And so, again, through all of this process, it's a process of self-discovery. And at the end of the day, what separates people who have success and ultimately achieve success and those who don't is persistence. It's holding on to that idea that you are capable of more and continuing to believe in that idea, continuing to pursue it and not giving up. And what I want you to get from this is to look at all of the mistakes that I've made, all the dumb, embarrassing, dirtbag type things that I've done. Quitting jobs, leaving jobs after a week, walking out, flaking on clients, etc. I have not been perfect at all. I've made tons and tons of mistakes. but I never quit. I continued to hold on to that dream and that idea. And again, I bring all this up because when I read that email, I feel a sense of desperation in someone who might be on the verge of giving up. And I want to encourage you, push you, prod you. Do not do that. Do not give up. I understand it gets rough at times. I've been there. I've stood on that assembly line floor doing this job that drove me absolutely insane, knowing that I was capable of so much more, wondering what in the world happened to get me to this place. I've been there. I understand what that feels like. The way out, it's not some gimmick, it's not some trick. It's discovering what it is that you were really meant to do with your life. And I know that sounds all cliche, and I'm not the lovey-dovey type, but trust me, it's there. And when you find it, you'll know. You will know. I sit down to do this, and it's a privilege for me that people will actually listen, that I have a business structure in place, that I can support myself doing this. It is an absolute privilege because it doesn't feel like work at all. I could do it every day, all day, really, if my voice would hold up. And so I know this is what I was meant to do. And so you just have to keep fighting for that. And the other thing to realize is that there's nothing special about any of the people that have had success doing any of this. You know, it's not that they're dramatically smarter. It's not based on intelligence. It's not they've had good luck. The difference, in my opinion, is, as I mentioned, persistence. And so, again, just keep fighting. Hold on to that dream, that idea that this is something that you can do. You will figure it out. It will happen. You just got to keep at it. You know, one of the big mistakes that I see a lot of developers make is they make learning how to code much harder than it has to be. For example, I see a lot of developers who think the list of skills that they need to learn to master PHP is pages and pages and pages long. It's not. Now, I've said this before, and I will definitely say it again, but there's a foundational set of skills that you need to learn in order to be functional as a PHP developer, meaning that you can execute on projects and get paid. This is the fallacy that is so prevalent in the PHP developer community, that there's this ideal set of skills that you have to learn, and that you have to be the absolute greatest developer in the history of mankind in order to be able to get paid to code. You don't. You simply need to be able to execute on projects. I talk about end results all the time. You need to be able to deliver end results to clients because that's ultimately what they want. But when you focus on these foundational skills and learning only those first, the things that will allow you to execute on projects, what you realize is that you can start getting paid to code much faster than you probably ever thought because you haven't set this idealistic, unattainable bar for yourself to reach before you allow yourself to take paid work. You can start now when you can execute on a deliverable, when you can complete a single project, when you can create a contact form or a business website. When you can execute on that, you can start. And you could start then building the life that you wanted, that you got into this all in the first place, instead of continuing to slave away at some job making somebody else rich. Anyway, you can learn these skills in my free course, The Beginner's Guide to PHP, which you can enroll in at johnmorrisonline.com/learnphp. And it's going to teach you these foundational skills so you can get started right now. Again, It's a completely free course that you can take at johnmorrisonline.com/learnphp. Don't wait on this. Head over there right now and get started building that life.